So before this, I was browsing around the internet, and I was on your YouTube channel. And
No.
I went to oldest, and I was blown away, man. You have videos on there with a 9-year timestamp. That is crazy.
Yeah, man, we started early.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, 2006, 2007?
Yeah.
That's right when it was coming out, YouTube.
Yeah. So I went to an industry event, and I heard Gary Vaynerchuk speak. And some people may or may not know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, but he had an online video show called Wine Library TV. And after the event, there was maybe 5, 6, 10 people who got together to chat with Gary afterwards, and I was one of them. Huh. And he was just like, everyone here, no matter what you do, you got to do an online video show on YouTube. And so I was like, okay. Yeah. And that was it, 937 videos later or something like that,
That's great advice. Yeah. I mean, at that time, he's been right about so many things, like a Snapchat. Yeah, I was just researching him, and he's a funny guy to follow. He's loud. He's right in your face. He's speaking. You're like, God, this guy stresses me out. I don't know how he does it. Okay, so you started doing the YouTube show, and is that really, is that where things took off? Or tell me a little bit about that journey, just creating content and how you got into health and all that.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, health was always this like half and half thing. So I was always into sports. I played football, basketball, tennis in high school, but the nutrition side was kind of lacking. I mean, my mom really didn't have soda in the house, but I didn't know much about nutrition and how to eat well. Before our tennis matches, my doubles partner and I used to eat a pack of Twinkies and a Mountain Dew, drink a Mountain Dew, and that would be our like energy boosting snack before the tennis match, and then top it off, we'd drive around the back of the high school and smoke a cigarette, and then we'd go play. So it wasn't Roger Federer, or anything like that.
Kids in high school, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look where it led us. So I went that path, and then I went to college. I didn't play any sports in college besides just like pick up games, that sort of stuff, and then average college story where, you drink too much and party too much and, don't get the best grades that you could. And after that, I got out of college and I started working for a friend of mine. I was living in a basement. I was doing web design in a basement in Brooklyn, New York. And again, still partying too much. And one morning I woke up and I'm just like, this is not going to work long term. There's no way this is going to be, my life. And so I kind of went back and I went back to Connecticut where I grew up, and a friend of mine gave me some audio MP3s, and they were from David Wolf, who is a well-known nutritionist. Avocado, you got it. And so I was running at that time, so got back into running. So I was running at that time, training for a marathon, and I just popped it in my earbuds, and I started listening to this, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, At that point, I was like, grilled chicken and steamed broccoli and brown rice were like the pinnacle of all health food. Yeah. And when I heard David talking, I just had no idea that there were certain foods that just had that much more nutrition and that much more power and or ability to give your body exactly what it needed. So
primarily like raw vegan.
Yeah, it was raw vegan. Yeah, absolutely. But also superfoods, things that, people now just talk about like they're whatever, goji berries or chocolate or.
Yeah, that's some maca. That's some goji berries. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. They're like, oh yeah, I know this. I put it in my smoothie every day that I get a Jamba Juice. So that was my foray into it. And again, I take things on like very fast, just like with the video show, Yeah. And so I just said, yeah, I'll be a raw vegan, no big deal. And so that kind of started my path into that side of my nutrition.
How long did you do raw vegan for?
So I did vegan for 6 years, and then raw interspersed between that period. And I did plenty of different raw diets. There's like the 80-10-10 diet, which is more of a fruitarian diet. I did like the high fat kind of superfood diet, which is more like David Wolf. Did the Gabriel Cousins, which is just like a lot of like plants, It's pretty much all plants and maybe some nuts and seeds kind of diet. And it was great for a while because, I had a little bit of weight on me. I lost all that weight, 6-pack abs, running, like I could run faster, and it was amazing for a while. And so, then of course, if something like that happens to you, you start, telling everyone about it. And that's right around the same time where we started blogging about it and talking.
Vegangelical.
Oh my gosh, just through the roof, man. Like, don't sit at a dinner table with me. I'll tell you everything about that plate that's wrong. And so we went that path, and then a couple years later, I started to see some symptoms of like my health just not doing exactly what I wanted to do.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just curious, with the 80-10-10 and like the raw vegan, you were just eating all day then, right? Because I tried that for 3 days and quit. So you're a much stronger man than I am, Kevin. I got shaky and almost passed out and almost hospitalized. It was not a hot moment. But what was your experience when you were on the raw vegan diet? Like, what was your diet looking like, or how did you feel on it?
Yeah. So one thing I want to preface this with is like, I don't think any diet is necessarily wrong. It just depends on, the type of diet for your body type and for how long you should do it for. So like, I'm going to say some things about the raw vegan diet that people might say, oh my gosh, like this guy's just bashing it, but it's not true. I mean, I think for some people, it might be the best thing that they can do for themselves for a certain period of time, depending on what their situation is. So eating all the time, absolutely eating all the time. Not only eating all the time, but thinking about my next meal while I was eating the meal I was eating. So that, to me, that's when it kind of became a little bit more of an obsession, and I would say probably transferred into like an orthorexic kind of situation. So from going to, just kind of eating regularly, not really thinking much about my food, to actually being totally obsessed with it, is definitely kind of an orthorexic kind of behavior. The other thing that happened was as you start getting deeper into it and you start to get symptoms that your diet is not working, which I'm sure anyone who's listening has probably had an experience where their diet didn't work for them. And not necessarily because, you couldn't resist cookies or anything like that. It's just the fact that your diet is not working for you right now is what happens to all your gurus and your friends. When you tell them this is happening, they say, hey, you're just not doing it exactly right. You need to do it a little bit better. You need to follow the doctrine or the scripture just a little bit more, a little bit tighter. And that to me, like, I didn't see it right at the moment, but that to me was kind of like my whole turning point, where I started to think like, wait a minute, like, is this really the way I should be doing this right now? Is this really the way I should be eating? Is raw vegan really good for me? And so that kind of started my mind churning a little bit.
Yeah. Detox. That was
yeah. You're still detoxing.
Yeah.
And I'd hear people say it and I'd be like, I probably said it too, but I mean, I don't know. Are you going to detox for 5 years?
Yeah. Right.
I don't know about that. I don't think so. I mean, maybe someone, but
yeah.
No.
Sure. And I like what you said though about this isn't a vegan versus paleo versus any diet. I mean, there's a time and place for everything. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves, I think, in like the paleo community, is when people get really dogmatic with it and say it's the right way, and everyone has to do it this way, and vegans are the opposite, and we're on our tribe paleo. And it's just, I mean, listening to like a David Wolf podcast, I learn way more than I do listening to another paleo podcast, because it's so different. And I can take a little thing from what he's saying, or, what any other raw vegan saying, and apply it to my health on whatever diet I follow, and I'm better for it, And so that whole us versus them thing is kind of a, I don't know, sticking point.
Yeah. Well, you're not down the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
Once you get down there, then suddenly, you can't see your way out of it, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, before closing the raw vegan chapter, what was like a typical meal looking like for people out there wondering? Just plan a picture in their head, when you talked about eating all day and then picturing your next meal, like what was a meal you were eating?
So I used to joke with my wife, Anne-Marie, that I wanted to start a salad bowl company. And literally, I would call it the big ass salad bowl. And the thing would be, I mean, it would literally be like half of a wine barrel,
Yeah.
And so literally it was that big. Yeah. That's what I wanted. But, my salad bowl was a little bit smaller. And it was just tons of lettuce, just tons of vegetables, just all sliced up, put in there. I do like a chia seed kind of kind of porridge kind of thing in the morning with stevia. Like I wasn't eating sugar at the time too. So I mean, I was pretty hardcore. I put maybe some like fruit, just so like, just very low glycemic, and some bee pollen. I'd add some in there too. I guess there's a little sugar in bee pollen. And then dinner would be almost just pretty much the same. It's just kind of rotating through the same kind of things. And for someone who likes different things, it actually was surprisingly not that boring. But now that I think about it, kind of being reformed, if you will, I can't even imagine eating a salad that big in my life right now. Yeah. It's kind of absurd. But for a guy like me, I'm 6'2". My body weight should be somewhere between 185 and 195 pounds. Like I need a lot of calories. This is not a, I'm not a small, thin person, so, nor am I inactive. I'm a very active guy. So a lot of calories.
So when was the time where you realized you needed something new, or that whatever vegan diet you were doing wasn't working, or what were you feeling during that period? Describe that.
Yeah. So for me, because I was a runner and still am, I was able to recognize like my different gears. So, when you're running, you start off in first gear, a long distance runner, particularly start off in first gear, and then you pick it up second, third, fourth, fifth. You kind of just like, it's almost natural progression. And by the end, you're running faster than you probably could have even ran, sustained in the beginning if you started out that fast. So what I started to notice was my fifth gear went away, and then my fourth gear went away, and then my third gear went away. And then I was maybe like pushing up into second gear, but that was about it. And that coupled with the fact that I was starting to have trouble getting out of bed in the morning. So we were traveling in an RV around, at that time, we took a 2.5 year kind of tour when we were doing our show. And we were traveling in an RV, and I'd be lying in bed in the RV, and it'd be 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I'm like, I can't even like have the energy to get out of bed. And again, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like, maybe I'm not doing the diet right. And then I'm thinking, a little bit more kind of negative. I'm like, maybe I have cancer. I have no idea. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just like, my body is just shutting down and this is it. So I started to do some research and just talk to some people. And again, that's where I got some of that. Hey, you're not doing the diet fully right. Maybe you're detoxing. I'm like, I don't know. And then I finally was hooked up with a friend who's named Dr. J.E. Williams, Dr. James Williams. And he was like, well, why don't you do some blood tests with me and see what's really going on? And he had a background in dealing with people like me. He was a raw vegan before. He did the vegan diet. Like, so he'd already been through that. So he's kind of he saw like me and him, maybe 30 years before. And so he offered to do that, and ran my blood tests, and surprise, like my hormones were totally out of whack. Which generally what happens, if you do the diet long enough, your hormones start to get out of whack. My cholesterol was super low. My pregnenolone, which is kind of like a grandfather or grandmother hormone that helps, produce other hormones, was at a 5, which is like the level of a 85-year-old man. So with that comes, inability to get out of bed, low sex drive, irritability. I mean, just think of anyone, 85-year-old grandfather, right? I mean, this is all, that's who I was, and I could stand up straight, that's
you need a Snickers bar, Kevin.
Yeah. You just eat. Yeah. Just eat something. So all those sorts of things. And he's like, you should probably consider changing your diet. And so I said, no. I said, no. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, can we try some supplements first? And, went down that path, tried the supplements, didn't work. And,
like bioidenticals?
Yeah, we didn't do the pregnenolone. No, we did the pregnenolone, but it didn't have the, like the really good, kind of effect that it did until I started to eat, yogurt. I figured as a vegan for 6 years, that, and I went into veganism for health, by the way, not for animal rights, but generally that kind of comes with it too. You start thinking about like, why are we killing animals? And I think that I still think about that fairly deeply. But I do eat animal protein now. So I started, kind of thinking, so I was like, I can't eat meat again. So what can I eat? And a friend of mine said, well, why don't you have like goat's yogurt? You know, if you do that, you know, you're kind of, you know, towing the line a little bit. And I said, well, that's great. If I do it for 3 months and it doesn't work, or 3 weeks and it doesn't work, who cares? You know, I can just, you know, swipe it under the rug. It was an experiment. It didn't work for me. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to have goat's yogurt. As a person who's a big fish in a really small like internet pond, I get recognized at, you know, Whole Foods or health food stores. So I go in to get yogurt, and suddenly I realize that I'm like, I'm actually going to buy yogurt as a raw vegan or a vegan at this time, like in a grocery store. And there's a possibility that someone will see me. Because when people recognize you as a health person in a grocery store, the first thing you do, I follow their eyes. It goes right down to your cart. Yeah. They're like, what's in there? You know, and they look at their car, they're like, does it have the same thing that I have?
No, seriously, like at Trader Joe's, people, I know the people there, and they know I run a podcast. Some of them listen, and I can't buy hash browns there anymore because of the judgment stares. So I tell my girlfriend, give me 5 bags of hash browns when you go.
Yeah, and you know they have a blog, and you know that they're writing about it on their blog. So like, the card was here, man. I don't know, like maybe I don't know if it was the same guy.
Yeah. He took a sample of the breadcrumbs in the yeah.
So what I did was I actually went up to the produce section. I got like 3 bunches of kale, and then I went over to the dairy section, got the container of yogurt, stuffed it under the kale, and then went up the counter. I know. Brought it home, dude. I looked at that thing and I said, you know, again, this could be an experiment, and I hope that it is. And I sat down with a spoon and I ate it. I ate it all in 5 minutes. It was 32 ounces of goat yogurt, gone in 5 minutes. And I was like, Anne-Marie, I need more. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I need more. And so literally for the next 2 months, I ate at least 32 ounces, if not 64 ounces of goat yogurt every single day.
That's like, how big is a 60? Yeah,
that's like the tub that, you know, that's that tub.
It's like
well, 32 is this one, and then 64 is 2 of them.
So the size of your head for people listening.
That's pretty minus the beard, yeah.
Minus the beard.
maybe 64 total.
Yeah, that'd be the XXL yogurt.
So my wife Anne-Marie, she says to me, she's like, "You're crazy. You know that. You just went from like, you know, vegan to yogurtarian, I guess. I don't even know what to call it." And I said, "Don't worry, hon. It'll see its way out." And it did.
It's just a detox.
Yeah, it just a detox, detox from veganism, I guess. But it totally like started to fizzle its way out. I rarely eat yogurt. The only time I eat yogurt now is if I see a little bit in my son's bowl and he left it, and I don't want to waste the food. But for me,
you're scared you'll go back to the yogurt beast. Do you have a problem?
You see me with just white yogurt all over my face, you know. But anyway, it filtered its way out, and within 2 to 3 months, you know, my entire outlook on life changed. My health changed. My sex drive was back. My energy was back. Emery actually called Dr. Williams and said, "I can't believe like what you've done for him. It's totally changed him. I wasn't irritable. I wasn't, you know, flying off the handle, all that sort of stuff."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you could literally feel the difference.
Oh my gosh. And I would wake up at like 7 a.m. and just get out of bed.
Yeah.
And it was insane, the amount of difference. And hormones don't work that fast. That's why just taking the pregnenolone like just didn't fully do it. And I continued to take it as well. But it takes some time. So you just have to be patient with it. And once it like kicks in, I mean, you could be a totally different person.
Yeah. And so, describe your diet today? Like, are you incorporating meats back in fully, or like what's a typical day eating look like for Kevin?
Yeah. And remember, you know, a snapshot here and then before, and then even in between is much different because after that, I got pretty disheartened with the whole diet thing. And I said, look, I live in Berkeley, California now, and I can get anything that I want organic. So that's what I'm going to do. And it was almost like hey, forget all you guys, you know, I'm just going to go on my own path. I spent 6 years not eating any of this stuff, so I'm going to eat it. And it felt great. I mean, I got a lot of energy back, and, you know, went through this process of just kind of exploring all different things from meats to craft beers to organic wine, like all the stuff that I didn't do for so long. Yeah. kind of opened up the floodgates, if you will. And, flash forward, being a raw vegan at 160 pounds, I ended up, sitting in front of my mirror one day and not able to button my pants at 223. So, I kind of ran up over there, and now I've dropped down. I'm still not at my ideal weight, but, I'm just still trying to figure that out right now.
Sure.
But so what do I eat now? So now essentially is a breakfast of a green smoothie. I think that's one of the best health things that you can do for your diet. Lots of greens, less fruit, just, straight up with maybe a little bit of protein powder, whether you like plant-based protein or dairy-based protein or meat-based protein, doesn't matter. That works well for me. Vegetarian salad for lunch, and then dinner is a meal with maybe meat, maybe not. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's like a typical day. And then okay, this is a good question. I want to know what the response was like then throughout that whole process for you. Cause you started 9 years ago. It's how we opened the show with your YouTube videos. And you mentioned going into Whole Foods and worried about the people seeing under the kale your goat yogurt. I mean, talk about those people in person, but online it's a totally different story,
Yeah.
So what was the response throughout this whole thing? Did you document it, and did people see it, or did you kind of keep it hidden, or what was that journey like?
Well, in the beginning, it was a thing for me that obviously I was reluctant to do, because we had built a following and an online presence and YouTube channel around mostly vegan and primarily raw food. So, and I had some experience already kind of moving from, fully raw to just kind of eating some cooked foods. And that was a big deal in the community, like from raw food to eating cooked foods. And so, and it was never a thing where I just kind of had this big announcement and just kind of rattled everyone, because it was one of those things where people put a lot of weight on their heroes or their experts or gurus and that sort of thing. And I've never professed to be a guru, but it just kind of naturally happens if you have a blog long enough or you do a video show. And so I didn't want to rattle people in that way, because I knew that I was doing this as an experiment to start. I had no idea if I was going to continue doing it. So for me, it was like, all right, I'll do it for three weeks, maybe more. If I'm not going to do a big announcement about it, because if it doesn't work, then I can just go back to doing what I'm doing, and then it's fine. And I can probably write about the fact that later that I did it and it didn't work, and that's cool. But what I also didn't want to do is I also didn't want to, when I finally realized it was working, I didn't want to rattle everyone and just send out this huge announcement and just kind of like just make everyone go crazy, because I don't know how good that actually serves. So what I did was I just started peppering in mentions of it, saying what I'm doing. And people, the crazy thing about the people who are following us is that 95% of them weren't even doing a raw food vegan diet. They were just looking for good health advice. Just like you're saying, if you listen to a raw food podcast versus a paleo podcast, I mean, you can take things from both of it and put it together and create a pretty decent diet for yourself. So that's what we did. The response was fine. I mean, the fruitarians, the crazy fruitarians, as everyone likes to call them, they went away, and they were a little loud. They were a little loud for a little while, and then they went away, and that was about it. I mean, we built enough trust with people to not have them kind of just fall off the wayside and just be a fair weather kind of source for information.
Yeah, that's a relief.
Yeah.
So the new book, Kale and Coffee. What's that all about? Is it only about kale and coffee, or kind of give us a bird's eye view of the new thing you were working on?
Well, it's like this thing there where it's kind of like this have your cake and eat it too kind of thing. I know a lot of people who will go get their green juice and they'll have their coffee right next to it, and that was kind of like the visual that I wanted to kind of to portray when talking about this, because people get it. They're like, yeah, I want my coffee and I want my green juice. Can I have the two together? Is that okay? And for me, the experience was I went crazy into this, raw food vegan world. And then I went into this, whatever you eat as long as it's organic world. Neither of them worked long-term for me. So was there a place where I could meet in the middle and, still have my frog leap wine, or, still eat salt, or still have a coffee if I wanted to. All these things that I enjoyed from both diets. Could I combine the two and make it work? And so that's what the book is about. It's about how you can combine the two, and a lot of research and myth busting about the common beliefs around certain foods like wine or gluten or sugar or these things that everyone's kind of so polarized about. Is it okay to have a little bit of that?
Yeah. So there's two kinds of people that we interview on the show. And the first kind is people who get on here and they say, no, moderation is the devil. Like, you can't do moderation. And then they launch into this monologue about why if you have a little bit of gluten, you're going to keel over and die. And then there's the other people who are more open to cheat days or treat meals or kind of that middle path of, 80% of the time you should eat healthy, primarily organic, yada, yada, yada. But that little 20%, maybe have some fun and live a little. Are you kind of, not to put you in a box here, but are you kind of more that second type? I'm not hearing a lot of the, you have to do everything 100% kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in that second type, but I think there are some guidelines to it. You know what I mean? Like for the individual. And so the way that I look at it is use modern science, use what, biochemistry markers, use blood testing to determine how your diet is working for you, and then see where you can push or pull back the limits. So pull back from the limits. So for you or me, we're both podcasters, right? But I mean, that's one thing that we have in common. We're both male, so there's other things that we have in common. I'm sure we have a lot more in common than that.
You can grow a beard, I can't.
I see some stubble there. But I mean, so yeah, you may think that we're like kind of the same people, but our body chemistry might be entirely different. You might be a fast metabolizer of certain things, where I'm a slow metabolizer of certain things. So I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine. I can't drink coffee. I mean, if I drink coffee in the morning, I'm up until 3:00 in the morning, and it's no fail. But for some people I know, they can drink coffee at 12:00 at night and go to sleep 3 minutes later. So your body chemistry is really, knowing your body chemistry is really important. So I think above all is, whether you're in one camp or the other, is that if you're regularly getting your blood tested with a good functional medicine practitioner or someone who knows about functional medicine, they don't have to be, a functional medicine MD, then you can define your own path. Mm-hmm. And I think that's even cooler because then you can say, hey, I think your diet's great. I'm going to take some of that. I think your diet's cool. I'm going to take some of that. I'm going to put them together, see how it works. And then you can watch your blood markers go, wacky. So for me, my cholesterol on the raw food diet was down at, 110-ish, a little bit lower than that. For me, that's not good. But then after I started eating this, crazy organic, whatever diet, I mean, my cholesterol shot up over 200. Now, the thing about it that's and some people might say that's fine, but the LDL to HDL ratio was totally off up at that level. It was really good around 170. So that seems to be where like my cholesterol should be. But that's for me. And now I know, like, hey, if I'm eating too much of this, up here, like, all the crazy stuff, then my body isn't doing what it needs to be doing, or it's not functioning properly or fully or as optimal as I want it to. And then I know if I'm down here, same thing. But in between, I can kind of play around with things to determine, what's working, what isn't. Yeah. And you can use the blood test as a marker to find that out. Okay. It's amazing. Yeah. No more diet fights, no more diet fights.
That's great advice, because those hard and fast lines of everybody has to be doing X, Y, and Z is kind of a dangerous place to get into when everyone's an individual. And I like your analogy about the coffee,
Yeah. And one thing to be clear, though, is I almost guarantee you, for 90% of the time, the diet that person is preaching absolutely works for them. So they're just fully convinced that it's just going to work for everyone else.
Yeah.
There will be 10% of people who are preaching that diet, but they're cheating on the back end. Yeah. But there's the 90% of those people, and I've met a lot of them. They're great people. They're, a lot of them are not all of them are great people, but most of them are like really great people out to really try to help people. And so they just know this diet works for me. I don't understand why it wouldn't work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. The intentions are good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think too, you brought up a point about like cheating on the back. The more hard and fast these lines are drawn, like everyone has to be doing X, Y, and Z. Like the times in my life where I was the most preachy were the times I had the most unhealthy relationship with food and eating, and those are the times I would be eating Ben and Jerry's at 12 p.m. and then getting up and trying to do my maca powder and bentonite clay and kombucha brewing and
to fix it.
Yeah, it was off balance. Okay, so going back to testing, you mentioned functional medicine testing, and we've had Reed Davis on here to talk about that.
Yeah.
Sean was talking about that. A lot of people have brought up testing. What are your thoughts on functional medicine testing? And I could ask more specifics.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think is that you need to have someone who really knows what they're doing, so they're pulling the right tests. I mean, someone could have pulled not only just your regular CBC, which is kind of like what you'd get at your just general practitioner healthcare professional. Maybe your lipids. If they're smart, they might look at like hemoglobin A1C. Maybe look at C-reactive protein, but that's kind of like a very basic kind of overview. So what I did with Dr. Williams, he brought me in to his clinic in Sarasota, Florida, and I talked to him he literally talked to me for an hour just about what are your symptoms, how are you feeling, what are the things, and then he picked tests based on that. And so he picked pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is not necessarily a test that most doctors would even functional medicine doctors would pin unless they kind of knew, where someone might be in the process of their diet causing degeneration, right? So you have to meet with someone, I think, and just chat with them, because you can order some of these tests depending on what state you're in or what country you're in. You can order some of these tests online, and some of them are easy, and you should. Like vitamin D, just order it online. You don't need to go through a doctor to do that. Yeah. Vitamin B12, some of these other ones, like you can order them online. It's fine. But some of the other ones, when you're having real health things, can really help identify what you're doing and how and what your body's doing. And for me, which the crazy thing about it is, I thought the whole time, after I did some more research, after I was not able to get out of bed, I thought that I was having candida issues because I knew that I had some gut problems. So I thought it was candida the whole time, and I was doing all these cleanses for candida. I was taking teas. I was doing treatments, all this sort of stuff. And it turns out that it was totally hormonal based. I mean, there might have been candida there, but it was all hormonal based. When I switched over to doing the things that were right for my hormones, within 2 to 3 months, everything felt great. Which before was insanity, right? Thinking about candida is not working. It's not working for candida. This isn't working. To like, oh, that was easy. What a good fix that was.
Yeah, there's a lot of confirmation bias when you get in your mind that you have a candida issue and you start reading all the symptoms and fixes of candida. Yeah. You're like, oh, low energy, I have that. Sometimes irritable, I have that, and a lot of it's like reading a horoscope sometimes with these issues. Like it could apply to anyone, like some of the stuff. So, okay, getting specific, testing, getting someone who knows what they're doing. Is there any, like the person listening to this at home, they've never gotten tested. Sounds like they have a disease. They are looking to get into like some basic tests. Where do they start? What are some good ones?
Yeah, it depends on your age, really. I mean, and male or female. So you want to do baseline stuff like vitamin D. You do want to check your cholesterol, particularly your HDL LDL ratio. Mm-hmm. That's a valuable marker to have. You can do some heart markers too, C-reactive protein, that sort of stuff. Diabetes type things too. You can look at your blood sugar. That's kind of, most people who are doing paleo though generally have a lower blood sugar. So those are some good ones. But then once you start getting like into your 30s, 35, and again, this is me channeling all the stuff that I've learned from Dr. Williams. I don't do any blood testing or anything like that. This is just the knowledge that we've done through programs that we've created and just that sort of stuff. So I'm just rehashing what he does. Then when you get in your 30s to 35, females definitely want to start looking at thyroid. That's generally something that starts to starts to decline a little bit. And for males, definitely testosterone and that sort of thing too. So those are kind of like the, where it goes. So males looking at sex hormones, females looking at thyroid, endocrine issues. Yeah.
What are the costs of a lot of these tests? That's a big thing that comes up for people. They say I don't have the time or I don't have the money. Those are the two biggest excuses with a lot of any area, and valid too.
Yeah.
I know some of these tests can be somewhat expensive. Have the costs dropped in the recent years, or are there any good cost-effective tests out there?
Some of them have. Some of the costs have dropped, but I mean, the cost is more like, I guess maybe airy fairy or that way, but the cost is like not catching something before you should, and then realizing what that looks like further on down the road, which could cost a heck of a lot more, particularly if you don't have great medical insurance, so diabetes or heart disease or cancer, those sorts of things. I mean, like you can look at some of your markers and you can see you're trending towards these things. Mm-hmm. But again, most people don't, that doesn't calculate that directly, because I feel fine now, so I'm fine. But what I say is like when you do certain blood tests, you can save money. So like there is like a little bit of an exchange. So for instance, like vitamin D, like you can do a vitamin D test, and if your vitamin D levels are fine, stop taking your vitamin D supplement. If your B12 is fine, don't take a B12 supplement. If your folate or all these other things are fine, there's no need for you to be spending your money on the supplement that you think may or may not work for you. Yeah. So, and you might even be able to get rid of some of your expensive superfoods by realizing that they make no difference, in the health of your body when you're using your blood test. So that's on that side. The other side is like, look, I budget it, and it's part of just what we do. It's just an important thing that we've qualified. Just like we spend more money on food than we do on our mortgage. So I mean, that's just priority for us. Yeah. And I understand, one of the criticisms of the book was that, I was able to go to Dr. Amen's clinic and get my brain tested, and I was able to do all this type of testing. We were able to get in an RV and travel around the country. But I mean, I don't think I'm that much more special than anyone else. I think that we just put a priority on those things, and that in turn allowed us to be able to afford those or get some of those things for free, which we did just because people wanted to, have us come in and write about them, Yeah. So I mean, that's resourceful. Yeah, it was being resourceful. And I think that initial block around, it's too expensive is a lack of willingness to be resourceful, because I think everyone is rather resourceful. Everyone's resourceful.
That's what Joel Salatin said when he was on here.
Yeah,
he was like,
love that guy.
Yeah, he's great, man, the best. And he said, people think Whole Foods too expensive. Well, if I go into their house, here's what I'm not gonna see. I'm not gonna see a big screen TV. I'm not gonna see potato chips, sodas, fancy couches. And he's talking about prioritizing. And the fact is, like, that's an unpopular thing to say is, hey, you should ditch the flat screen, but at the end of the day, there's trade-offs, but I just wanted to do my Joel Salatin impression.
Dude, I love it.
Wine is a topic you brought up in your book. I know we're coming up on time, but I definitely wanted to hit this. The myth, 2 glasses of red wine, heart healthy. What are your thoughts on that, or just wine in your book? Yeah,
so I mean, wine is a funny word right now because my son is whining right now. So like I hear wine, I'm like, oh no, where is it? Not like right here, but just like every morning, So I'm like, oh my God, wine. So you triggered me. But no, the thing about wine and the thing about a lot of foods, and the reason why a lot of our research is wrong, is this: you cannot take one bottle of wine and pit it against the other and say it's the same thing. Just like you can't pit a steak that's been, raised on a factory farm that they sell at the dollar store. There's actually they sell steak at the dollar store here in Berkeley. I've seen it. There's a sign out front. It's insane. So that piece of steak from that dollar store is not the same nutritionally as a piece of steak from a grass-fed, grass-finished cow. One is extremely, not heart healthy, high omega-6, low omega-3 ratio. The other one is incredibly heart healthy, high omega-3s, lower omega-6. So like you look at those two, one's inflammatory, one's anti-inflammatory. same food looks, well, I don't know if it looks the same from the dollar store, but probably could look fairly similar. Still call it a steak, different food. Same with wine. 2 different bottles of wine, one raised biodynamically, organically with healthy vines, healthy grape, low sugar, lower alcohol content, higher nutrient value, higher antioxidants. That's a different drink than, you could almost say like one's a green juice and one's soda. The California wines, the big bold, wine on steroids, which John Williams from Frog Leap says, wine on steroids. I mean, this is just high sugar, high alcohol, not that much more. Yeah. So our studies aren't even right. You know what I mean? Because there's no way they're buying Frog Leap for their study.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like $30-$40 a bottle.
Right. Yeah.
They're buying like Barefoot, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So then, choosing a wine, selecting a wine, let's just talk about the right wine then. Do you have wine recommendations? It's not normally a topic we get into on the show. You're Wine Library TV right now. So give me your Gary V health.
Give my Gary V. Oh my God. Let me give it a sniffy sniff.
Yeah. You got to talk 300 words a minute. Jeez.
I think, Frog's Leap is great. I mean, they don't pay me any money. Frog's Leap. They don't pay me any money to recommend them. They're great. Paul Dolan is another one that again, is grown along these same principles. And all these guys hang out. Like, this is the cool thing is like, there's a network of guys up in Napa. I'm pointing this way because that's where Napa is. It's right up there, about an hour. They get together and they talk about biodynamic, healthy, sustainability of the area. Because what happens is if there's not that much biodiversity, insects come in or disease comes in, wipe out, all the vines, and everyone's, not producing wine. So those are definitely some of the old world wines have lower alcohol content, and that's generally a sign that they're probably being grown well, not necessarily, but generally.
Like,
and the other thing,
11% versus 13, or
yeah, absolutely. Well, no, 13 is okay, but once you get into 14 or 15, that sort of thing, like 11 or 12 is kind of where you might be looking.
Okay,
and that's not always true. And then if you read the story on their website, you want to look for dry farming.
Dry farming.
Mm-hmm. Dry farming means no irrigation. And so what happens is the vines get to grow, the roots get to grow deeper into the ground, so they're stronger. They have a stronger base, because a lot of the disease that happens from wines, or even just like the not thriving, is because the drip irrigation system just drips right on the top, and so the roots are up towards the top, and that allows the vines to get infected, allows bacteria to destroy them essentially. A good dry farm vine can live between 70 to like 120 years. Most of these irrigated vines, they live somewhere between like 12 to 25 years.
Yeah, wow.
So think about that. I mean, like, the difference is insane.
Yeah. I love that analogy too you made with factory farming. And like when you drive down the 5 and you smell that cow on cow.
Stockton.
It's gross versus the grass-fed cows, they're roaming around. And it's the same thing if you think about it with wine. So the price point then, when I go to Trader Joe's, I'm not a wine guy, but when I do buy wine, I go to Trader Joe's and I just look at the organic ones and choose the cheapest one from that. I'm probably $6 to $10. Are these more expensive, or can you find one in like a $6 to $10 range, or do I just have to step up my game?
I mean, I don't know what Fetzer is. I mean, Fetzer's an okay wine. They use all these, they use these properties of growing. So I don't know where they are in terms of price point, but it's more expensive. Yeah, I mean, you do get what you pay for, just like that dollar steak at the dollar store. I almost want to buy one just to try it, just to have a taste of it to see. But so you do get what you pay for. But something that's interesting, you might want to check out with Trader Joe's, because some of these people might be bottling under the Trader Joe's label too. So, you might want to see, maybe Fetzer is, bottling under like an organic, like Trader Joe's wine.
Yeah.
So you might be getting the same thing for a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good tip. I'll look into that. Yeah. Well, the wine show is concluded, Kevin. We'll cork it right there.
That was good.
No more puns.
No more puns.
That was fun, Kevin. So Kale and Coffee is the new book. Of course, there's links in the description, Amazon, any place you want to direct our listeners to.
Just go to kevingianni.com or get the book on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah. Cool, man. This was a fun one. Thanks for coming on, Kevin.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Kale and Coffee, everyone. That's the show. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Clark, your host from paleohacks.com, the place to be for everything paleo and more. Articles, recipes, blogs. Get yourself healthy. Join our email list. We send every day kind of health tips and what's new. If you want to get a hold of me, clark@clarkdanger.com is the best email to reach me at. I always check those. Love hearing your comments and feedback. Kevin's book, Kale and Coffee, pick it up on Amazon. Go get it, have a laugh, and if you like this show, let us know. I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.